Hi everybody, I'm Jeff with Virginia Paranormal Investigations, and today we're down here for an episode of Graveyard Shift, and we're going to be talking about a different type of graveyard, a tomb that's not found in a cemetery, but instead it's found in a train tunnel. And this behind us here is the entrance to the Churchill Tunnel here in Richmond, and this is where in 1925 there was a work train with a couple flatbeds and a couple workers were in there repairing the tunnel, and the tunnel collapsed. The engineer, the firemen, several of the men were trapped in the tunnel, and it said that some of them were just panicking. They had the, rocks and debris and everything collapsing on them, and they were cutting people with knives trying to get to the entrance and trying to get to daylight, just going hysterical. One of the urban legends that's associated with this tunnel is that of the Richmond vampire. The fireman, I believe his last name was Mosby, came running out of this tunnel, and he was delirious. He was rushed to a hospital and he died later on. Now bystanders say they saw the Richmond vampire come running out of the debris as the tunnel was collapsing, and they described him as just being burnt with flesh hanging off, sharp fangs, fire in his eyes. He came running out of this tunnel and into the Hollywood Cemetery, where he disappeared into W.W. Poole's tomb. Now, this side of the Churchill Tunnel, as you can see behind me here, is beautiful. It's restored. It's on private property now. And it serves as a nice little monument to those who are entombed inside. However, the other side comes out in a forgotten area of Richmond over a stream, and it's just off in the woods. And that is the side where supposedly the Richmond vampire emerged from the tunnel and disappeared into Hollywood Cemetery. Down here on the side of this building, not too far from the entrance of the Churchill Tunnel, we found a pretty nice mural, and it shows, looks like the engineer or the conductor standing there with the old steam engine right outside of the tunnel. It says 1925 C&O. That's the year that the tunnel collapsed and the men were entombed inside. Well, here we are in Hollywood Cemetery, and this was established in 1847, and a lot of famous people are buried here. Some Virginia governors, also some of the presidents of the United States, and also Confederate President Jefferson Davis is buried here. So we're going to have a look around and kind of give you an overview of the cemetery and what it looks like and one of the legends that's associated with it. And this is the Confederate section of the cemetery. This is the monument to the Confederate dead, and all around us here are the gravestones for the Confederate soldiers that died, most of which died during the Civil War. Doesn't look like there's any that died afterwards from what we've seen from the dates on the stones. And in this section of the cemetery are 18,000 Confederate soldiers. Alright, these are the Confederate soldiers that were killed in Gettysburg. Now, among the Confederate dead here is believed to be Brigadier General Richard Brooke Garnett, who was killed in the final day of the battle at Gettysburg. He was originally buried on the Gettysburg battlefield, and then in 1872 he was moved to this location, but they're not sure exactly where, or I guess if that actually happened, but they believe he's buried among these remains. And what do you see on the side of that?
It says Kemper's Brigade, or some portion of it, was engaged in the following battles: Bull Run, 1st Manassas, Drainsville, Williamsburg, 7 Pines, Fair Oaks, 7 Days Battles, 2nd Manassas, Turner's Gap, Sharpsburg, Fredericksburg, Gettysburg, Plymouth, North Carolina, Drury's Bluff, Howlett's House, Milford Station, Cold Harbor, Clay House, Deep Bottom, Dinwiddie Courthouse, Five Forks, and Sailor's Creek. Okay, it says Virginia, mother of heroes, statesmen, patriots. In the long list of glory, lighted names that sleep within thy bosom, none shall brighter shine than these, who bravely striving to bear aloft thy banner, battling for duty, God, and native land, fell on the field of honor. They die for thee.
All right, we're getting ready to leave the Confederate section now and wander into some of the other sections of the cemetery and see what we can find. There's some presidents buried up here. 2 U.S. presidents we mentioned, and also Jefferson Davis is buried up here. And we're also going to look for a local legend that is associated with this graveyard. If we can find that tomb, we'll tell you all about it. Where we are now is called President's Circle, and we finally found it after trekking up and down these hills of this cemetery. We probably should have got a map, but I wanted to save $1, so I took a picture of a little stone one on my camera, and I was looking at that, and long story short, we found it. So President's Circle is here. Nice part of the cemetery, and we're going to take a walk down here and take a look at their graves, show you what they look like. And off to my left, you can see, I think there's people swimming down there, and it seems like they have a little bit better of an idea than we actually have today. Probably should be doing that, but nonetheless, we're gonna go up here and see what we find. All right, the first one we came upon here is John Tyler, President of the United States. Looks like he died in 1845, and he was born in Charles City, Virginia. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we did an investigation in Charles City. Was it the Edgewood Plantation? So he's from Charles City, and it looks like he died in Richmond. So let's wander around the circle and see what other presidents we can find. All right, so here we are, President James Monroe. And I found this little plaque here. It says he was a Revolutionary War soldier, 1775, 1776. And you can see there's quite the structure around his tomb. And I'm not sure if this is the reason for this one. I do know they made smaller structures way back to go around tombs to prevent grave robbers from stealing some of the bodies. And people could even rent these structures to go around their cages, or the cages to go around their tombs for a period of time until the body was no longer considered usable for medical research, because primarily the grave robbers, they would steal the bodies and sell them to universities and stuff for research. So they'd put little cages around their tombs so they couldn't steal the bodies. I don't know if that's what this is, but as you can see, it's a cage. It's got a lock on it. So I would imagine they put that around there so it would serve a purpose like that. All right, so we thought we were going to find Jefferson Davis in Presidential Circle, but we didn't. We had to trek down the street a little ways, cross a couple more hills, up a couple hills, and we found his burial site. It's got a statue of him put on top. We have 2 Confederate battle flags in the front, and then high atop is also the Confederate flag flying. And I'm not saying we saved the best president for last, but here's Jefferson Davis. Buried next to Jefferson Davis is his wife. And I'd like to point out a small ghost story associated with his wife. It's not here at the Hollywood Cemetery, however it's at Fort Monroe. At Fort Monroe, as you know, Jefferson Davis was locked up for a conspiracy to kill the President Lincoln. While he was locked up there, his wife lived on the base, and she would, come out and walk around the ramparts every night. And it's said that after she died, her ghost still walks around the top of Fort Monroe looking for her husband. So this is where she's buried, along with President Davis. One last interesting site, it's the Confederate officers section. That's another nice little part of the cemetery, partially shaded. Got some ivy growing on the wall in the back. Confederate flag waving over the tombs, and a cannon in the ground. A nice little memorial they set up. So, on our way out of the cemetery, we found one of our main points of interest, the tomb of W.W. Poole. And the legend associated with this tomb is that of the Richmond vampire. It was said that, as I stated earlier, after the collapse of the Churchill Tunnel, the vampire, or the figure they described as a vampire, came running out of the tunnel, came into Hollywood Cemetery, and disappeared into this tomb. And since then, this tomb has been associated with the Richmond vampire. Some people say W.W. Poole is the Richmond vampire. The fact of the matter is, W.W. Poole was an American bookkeeper from Mississippi, and he passed away. Probably just a regular guy. Probably, as we said earlier, the way that legend kind of built up. But this is where it is, and you can see this on some of the books of haunted places in Virginia. And it definitely has like a vampire-like feel to it. Now, I'm not saying I came here to do an investigation, but I do happen to have an EMF detector here, and I've had this running in my pocket for part of the time, and there hasn't been much activity on it. A little bit down there by the mausoleum, but that was probably because of the electricity that was going in there. It looked like they had some kind of a chandelier or something like that, but nothing around here significant, nothing throughout most of the cemetery. But I'd love to come back here at night, but we weren't able to obtain permission to do that. Now, I'm no expert on vampires by any means. I'm more interested in ghosts, UFOs, stuff like that. But I would think that 80 degrees is a little hot for a vampire to be sleeping. I think they need it cold, because they seem like they would, right? Don't they kind of seem, yeah. So, I don't think there's any vampire in there. Needless to say, the sun is going down, so we need to get out of here before we find out, because that's one thing I don't want to mess around with, is a vampire. Alright, so we're leaving the Hollywood Cemetery right now. Now, if you'd like to come and visit, and you're looking for some points of interest, at the intersection of Westvale and Confederate Ave, come down and take a left, and that's where Poole is. And then you go a little bit farther around, you can hit President's Circle. But if you come in and go to the right, you're going to hit that big Confederate monument with all the Confederate thing. Beautiful cemetery. I wish we had more time here, and I would definitely recommend coming down here and checking it out. It's got a lot of history, and it's just a beautiful place. There's quite the scene from the banks over there, the James River, and it's just a beautiful place.